Good evening and welcome to Raconteurs News. It is January the 10th. It's a Tuesday night as usual. And here we are again. It's the second show. It's show 101. And I think it's the first one that Andy's not been involved in. To shout it. Andy, unfortunately, is not joining us tonight. Unfortunately, last night he copped an unfortunate curry, and this morning has spelt the rest of the day has been feeling a little bit under the weather. He's got the earthers, but never mind. We can always get a replacement in, and I have tonight. So tonight, joining me and co-hosting with me alongside, taking up Andy's seat is Ade Hardy. Good evening, Ade. How are you doing?
Evening, Jason. I'm good, mate. Thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm superb, my friend. It's been a bit of a strange week, hasn't it? I mean, we've been told we're getting snow, and it all we're getting is just dark, damp, dank, cold weather. It's awful. How are things at your end, Ade?
Yeah, the usual drizzle.
The usual drizzle.
Yeah.
Right, well, we've got a superb show lined up for you tonight, and we've got a great guest on as well. But first of all, while we've got you here, Adi, I thought if you could just give us a quick update on Daisy and how she's doing.
Yeah. Just for those of you that weren't listening to the original broadcast, Daisy was basically stuck in the mental health system. She was originally a NHS inadvertent whistleblower and lost her home, a job, and was basically living out of the back of a car. And she was sectioned by a section 2 on the mental health, and it took us four weeks, but we did get her out of there. She's currently back staying with her parents, and because of the distance between where she was sectioned and where her parents live, she's actually had to move mental health systems or groups, whatever you call it.
Areas.
Yeah, that in itself has been a little bit of a challenge for her. She did, she did end up a couple of days before Christmas, sat in the local Weatherspoons, literally having a coffee with her brother, and the lady she'd been in the mental health meeting with about an hour before came and sat straight across from her, sat in the pub. Now, whether that was some kind of intimidation or whether it was just a coincidence, not that I believe in coincidences anymore, who knows? Say, Daisy's currently living up there with her parents. The problem with that is she won't mind me saying that she's in her 40s. And moving back to your parents when you've been a successful surgeon in itself it's a bit of an admission of failure
Well,
in
it's
her
not.
eyes.
It's a regression, isn't it? It's a bit of
Yeah,
a regression,
absolutely.
and yeah,
And I'm sure. I mean, I speak to her daily. I've spoke to her literally about an hour ago, and for it to sort of fall into a dark place in a small room is quite easy, and I can kind of see that happening. And hopefully, she's going to grow from here and see that actually one thing she has got that she didn't have at the beginning of her career is an awful lot of knowledge. And so hopefully, looking positively, she can move on from this and look back on it in a few months as something that happened in life that only made her stronger. But, we are where we are with it. She's not incarcerated anymore. She is to 90 sort of percent free, although she has got to keep within the mental health system for now. And we're all I'm incredibly honoured to even have her as a friend because trust for her is just such a big thing after what she's been through. And I know there's a lot of people out there that keep asking. And Daisy, I know you're listening tonight. And what I would say is, love you, mate. Keep fighting the fight, and we're there with you, every one
yeah.
of you.
I'm sure everybody here at Raconteurs News and Autonomous Media would pass on those love and wishes to her as well. On a personal
Jason,
note, sorry, go
I,
on.
I'll just give you an example of what she's like because I've been sort of dealing with Daisy and that side of things for quite a while now. My sort of attachment to the local, what's going on around me, has sort of fallen by the wayside. And a couple of people have told me recently that there was a couple of fracking groups popped up because about 3 miles from me, they're going to start fracking. And I mentioned this to her today, and she was straight there with, I've got this document, I've got that document, I did a lot of work with this, I've got, and that's just what she's like, you know, even though she's been through hell and back, you know, she's there with all this sort of fracking information, and it's just what she's like. So, you know, more power to your elbow.
Yeah, well, it's certainly we wish Daisy very well. Everybody at Raconteurs News, like I said, and Autonomous Media would wish Daisy very, very well. On a personal note, Ade, how are you feeling about being a co-host tonight?
Yeah, great. I'm really looking forward to it. I know we've got a fantastic guest on, and without me taking up any more of the time, why don't we introduce him?
Yeah, I think we should. So let's introduce, without further ado, our guest tonight. We've got Roger Landry. Now, Roger, he founded the Liberty Beacon Project on August the 19th, 2012. I bet you can't guess I'm reading this. With the belief that the most important issue facing mankind today is programmed ignorance. And so, without further ado, let's introduce Roger. Roger, how are you doing, Roger?
Well, compared to the friends you just both described, I guess I'm doing very well. Although I do understand what she's going through. And today, in the world we live in today, it's not that rare a story, especially for people who are concerned about everything that's going on this planet today. It's more common than, say, when I was young, and I'm 3 generations old. I'm 62 years old. Stories like hers are much, much more common today than they were when I was a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roger, what we found was that they're just hell bent on sticking labels on people, and you know, if you don't fall into what they call normal, I mean, if they knew what was in my brain, they'd have kept me in there.
Well, just to give you, I have to excuse me, I've got a bit of sore throat because I talk for a living, and excuse me, I facilitate at least, well, close to 3 dozen global websites,
Wow.
a brand new TLB TV network, and do at least 6 to 8 podcast shows a week. So I have spent so much of the last, and just to get, here's something that you guys might not know. About 8 years ago, I was everything you rail against. And let me qualify that, okay? I worked for the Department of Defense facilitating DoD contracts. I spent my 30 years of my life traveling around the world making what kills people work, including spending about 6 years total in the UK, and a good portion of that being in southern Scotland, or in the area where the United States had a submarine base. Okay, Faslane. And I've been to, you've been to Holy Lock. We had that. That's actually where I spent a lot of my time. But I absolutely think that Great Britain, especially the Scottish Highlands, is the most gorgeous place on the planet. But
Yeah.
I do. But I spent, okay, 3 decades of my life, my most formative years up until that point, being the biggest ultra neocon you had ever met in your life. Had you met me 8 years ago, you probably would have wished you hadn't. Everything the United States did in all of its unambiguous imperialism was okay with me. I thought this is what we needed to do, and if anybody opened their mouth, we needed to slap them back. And since we had the biggest stick, we might as well use it. And I spent 30 years, okay, going around the globe. I was out of the country 80% of every year for almost 3 full decades, 30
Wow.
years. I have over 1.5 million air miles under my belt. And you would not have found a more arrogant and self-serving American had you tried.
What was there a particular point, a particular catalyst, or a particular incident that happened that made you
Yes.
turn from that side? That
Absolutely.
we'd call the dark side, and if so,
Yeah, it is the dark side. Yes. Okay. I love the Star Wars movies. I grew up, that was like my focal point. But anyway, that and Star Trek. But what really turned me was, although I have had a lot of um, ignorance, and again, the entire premise of the Liberty Beacon Project, which was founded, again, as you said, in August of 2012, is the eradication of programmed ignorance. To say that the world is full of stupid people is to misstate. The world is not full of stupid people, but the world is massively overpopulated with ignorant people. And in a lot of cases, that's intentional. It's a self-serving, self-protecting mechanism for a lot of people. But for a vast majority of the population on this planet, this is intentional, and it is the tool of governments. It's the tool of governments to accomplish the things that they need to accomplish. So what is the mission statement of the Liberty Beacon Project? It is the eradication of programmed ignorance, because once you show somebody the truth, if they still wish to follow the path of lies, now they've crossed from ignorant to stupid. But to call people stupid until you're aware that they actually have the facts is unjustified. So, what happened to me? I was always considered to be an intelligent individual by those who give these, I don't know, these tests and whatever, and I don't put much stock in it, but I was considered to be an intelligent individual, and I was always open to listen. About 8 years ago, a friend of mine knocked on my door, and I was living in Texas, and I invited him in, and he came in and sat down, and I had Fox News on, and that's a big neocon. I'm sure you guys, even over in Great Britain, you know what Fox News is.
Absolutely.
It is the conservative neocon TV radio stations, okay? That was on 24/7 in my house. I literally changed the channel occasionally, but not very often. So the Fox News channel was always on. And he came in, he sat down, he shook his head, he looked at me, and he said, "For such a smart person, I've never met someone so ignorant." And I said, "You don't say things like that to me without explaining it. What do you mean by that?" And notice he didn't say stupid. He said ignorant. He said, "For somebody with the ability to know so much, you actually know so little. And what you do know is choreographed." Now, for anybody to tell me that I was a puppet or I was being used, immediately the hairs went up on the back of my neck, and now you better be proving what you're saying. So my laptop was sitting on the coffee table in front of us, and he opened it up, and he started to show me things. Well, he did that for about 6 hours, and I just got more and more aggravated, and I try. At first, it was easy to say, "Well, that's a bunch of bullshit because it's this, or it's because of this," and throw excuses back at him and try to thwart what he was trying to do. But the more he showed me, and the more I saw, something crept into my psyche that I hadn't had for a very long time. I was an extremely confident individual, and now I had some doubts. So after about 8 hours of this straight, I kicked him out. But now my curiosity and my doubt had been piqued. For the next 2 weeks, okay, every minute I wasn't working or sleeping, I was sitting in front of my computer, jumping from one site, one article, one bit of research, one chart, one video to the next, over and over and over again. I need to explain something to both of you fine gentlemen. Having the entire foundation you have built your life and your very way of reasoning and your very way of thinking torn out from under you, having that foundation ripped out from under you, is either going to be an extremely painful process or the most uplifting thing that's ever going to happen to you. In those 2 weeks, I experienced both of those. I literally didn't talk to anybody for 2 weeks, and I'm a natural born talker.
Yeah, and I think we can both relate to that. I think we can both relate to that, Roger, especially Ade. We've just got a question in the chat room that I just want to I just
Sure.
want to bring up before it goes away, because I don't seem to be able to find a way to save it. But it says, the question is from Mithrin in the chat room, and he says, I disagree with the guest. I know I'm thick, but when I go outside the house, I'm most often the brightest person I come across.
Did he say I know I'm fake?
No, thick, as in dumb, stupid, daft.
Okay. Well, you know what? If he's saying I know that I'm dumb, but once I go outside the house, I feel I'm one of the most intelligent people around, then he's absolutely right on all counts. And I don't find any reason for him to disagree with me at all, because I actually believe exactly what he just said. The thing of it is, if you are not your own worst critic, then you're a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm going to tell everybody out there as much as I know. I will never, ever tell you I'm an expert on anything. And the day I do, I expect you to call me to task. This is my, I don't know, my mantra. This is what I tell people when they say, who are you? I'm an expert at nothing, but I know enough about anything to have at least an intelligent conversation about everything. Now, to our friend in the chat room, he said that exquisitely. That was absolutely phenomenal. I know I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree, but when I go out and I'm in a crowd, I feel like I'm one of the most intelligent people there. You're not one of the most intelligent people there, and I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm telling you it's your perception. And your perception is correct, but you're not probably the most intelligent, because what is surrounding you is ignorance. It is
Right.
people who have been fed a line for so long by such a powerful mechanism called governance that they absolutely have either been beaten down to the appearance of stupidity, the lack of knowledge, or the lack of intelligence. But you take that person and you isolate them, such as what was done with me, and you make the knowledge available to them and watch them blossom like any flower on a beautiful spring day.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, I've got exactly that experience with Ade. He was the one. I woke him up. He was He was just a complete drone, really. I suppose. I don't know any other way to say it.
I mean, Roger, I'd spent almost 20 years of my life as a financial advisor and been heavily involved in
We won't hold that against you. If you don't hold me working for the DOD for 30 years against me.
Get it?
My now ex fiance, she's been in banking for over 30 years.
Ouch.
And I was quite fortunate that I'd got a mate called Jason, because when he made me aware, it took him months. I must have been so thick, dumb, and stupid. It took him months. And I don't know what it was, but one day he said something.
Let me jump in. I apologize. Please, I will let you finish, but let me jump in because you just made a mistake, okay? I must have been thick. I must have been really dumb because it took months. I need to explain to you the average person's wake-up time is very slow and very non-painful process. The average person wakes up over months, if not years. When you get woken up the way I did, when it gets slammed down on you, it's a very traumatic experience, and it foments either pulling back, withdrawing, taking yourself out of the picture, hiding in your shell or under a rock, or it foments activism, where you charge ahead to say, I don't like being used, I don't like being kept ignorant, I don't like, and I'm going to do something about this. So when you say it took months, you still understood and woke up faster than most people do. In America, we have had freedom movements across the internet that have been raining information down for at least a decade, and we're just now seeing that come to fruition. 10 years. So you actually did pretty damn good, my friend.
Well, what basically happened, there was months and months, and the odd day of the week I'd call at Jason's and he'd put the kettle on and I'd just have a cup of tea and, talk about stuff. And all of a sudden, I was just like the floodgates that opened. And, when they say, the truth will set you free, but first it will really piss you off. I was that guy. And for a long time, I just couldn't get my head around it, and I didn't know what tied the whole thing together. But once I'd got it, I mean, in Jason's words, what did you say? It took me 6 months to do what you did in 6 years, Jason.
Yeah, I think around about that time I'd been at it for about 6 years, and then you were coming up at things with me after 6 months, things that I'd not even come across. So yeah, you just went ultra.
I also had a situation with my ex, who I would never ever say a bad word about. She's a lovely lady, and in fact, I've spoken to her 3 times today. Now, she is in that group where they know what's going on, they've got a good idea, but they choose not to do anything about it because of other things they've got going on in their lives, close
Well,
family who need support, etc.
I, I would tell you that you're going to see a lot of people like that because it scares them to step out of what I call their comfort bubble. But Jason, you're saying that your friend woke up so quick, or that after 6 months he was doing the things that it took you 6 years to do. What you need to understand is there's nothing strange about that whatsoever. There really isn't. The person that woke me up, it took him 10 years to wake up.
Wow.
The people that I'm waking up, okay, it's taking them 3 to 4 months to wake up with. Occasionally, I find one that's wide awake within a couple of weeks. But who woke them up? Who presented the information that popped that bubble of ignorance? Who brought them from absolutely knowing nothing to being a shining star? Jason, you did that. So everybody you wake up is not going to take the 6 years it took you, and they're going to have a level of knowledge much quicker because you are their instructor. You are the person putting that knowledge into their head. Stop and think about a waking up process. It's one little piece of information here that kind of makes you wrinkle your brow a little bit. Then it's another piece of information, maybe a month later, that says, well, I remember hearing about this, and now you put those two together. What you're seeing is a process that builds in speed and momentum, like rolling that rock, that pebble down a snowy mountainside. And by the time it gets to the bottom, it's freaking huge. Okay? So
You know,
this is what you're seeing. What you do when you wake someone up, Jason, like your great friend here, is you don't go in and start throwing little pebbles at him. You go in and you give him the meat and the potatoes. You give him the full course freaking meal. So, of course, after 6 months, he's right on par with you. But that credits you as much as it does his intelligence.
Rob Halford, who was the guest last week on Raconteurs News, he came up with a really, really good one-liner that I found really useful, and that was that people won't move out of their comfort zone until they're pushed pretty hard.
They won't. They absolutely won't. Or one of the things I hear over and over again when you try to show people where the government has done something to screw them over, they say, this is a one-time thing and it's just a coincidence. Well, if you go to the Liberty Beacon, which is our flagship site, which is the very first one, and it is still our flagship site, it's thelibertybeacon.com. You go to across the top, you'll see something called Reality Bites in the black and white bar across the very top of the website. Go in there. I make up picture memes. I make up a lot of them, and I've been making them up for many years. And they're all one-liners, okay? They're all one-liners. And one day I got hit by a half a dozen people all in the same day, and these were sheeple. I hate the word, but it's so descriptive. It's become a part of our language today.
Yep.
By at least a half a dozen sheeple saying that's just a coincidence. Well, let me tell you what I believe a coincidence is. Coincidence is the tale of tyrants and the belief of fools. So do you consider yourself a fool?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would agree with that.
Okay, I'm going to take.
I certainly don't. I certainly don't believe in coincidence anymore. Like the situation where Daisy had got the lady that an hour earlier she'd been in a meeting and she was sat one side of the table. That's not a coincidence.
What was the area that she spoke up about? You said she's a whistleblower. I have the
Yeah,
utmost respect for those who actually are whistleblowers. There are some who claim to be, and they're basically COINTELPRO, okay? But there are some damn good whistleblowers out there. So what was it that she pushed back on?
Daisy was working as a surgeon within the National Health Service here in the UK for 20 years. She was in charge of a department, and there was a private enterprise. Now, what I took that to mean was the NHS had paid a private company to supply goods and services to her department. At least some, if not all, of those goods and services that had been promised didn't happen. So she sent an email to her boss saying, "Did you know that this hasn't happened? I'm raising my work concerns in the workplace." What she didn't know was that everybody up the ladder above her were all involved.
I would tell you, and I kind of got that idea. I have authored at least 100 articles plus on vaccine damage, on big pharmaceuticals, on anybody who doesn't. Let me give you guys a few precepts. Let's knock. And I love America. I am so pro-American. It's insane. I am very patriotic. I love my country. What I hate is what is being done across the planet in our name. So let me poke a few holes in the bullshit that some people think about America. Okay, America, when I was born, the United States of America was the healthiest and most vibrant society on this planet, bar none. Now, there were others who were right up there with us, but we were the healthiest and most vibrant society on the planet. Today, 3 short generations later, the United States has the sickest, chronically sickest society on the planet. This is in 3 generations. 60 freaking years. We have fallen from the healthiest society on the planet to the sickest society in the industrialized world, and in some cases, the sickest society on the entire planet, depending on what you're talking about. If you're talking about dementia, Alzheimer's, we're the world leaders. We have more people whose brains are disconnected from reality in this country than any country on the planet. Autism, the highest rate of autism on the planet, okay? Immune dysfunctions, of which there are hundreds of them. The United States suffers the highest level of autoimmune dysfunction on the planet. Critical food allergies that kill more people. It doesn't sound like you got a food allergy. That's not bad. Bull crap. It's very bad. It kills many people. Who is the number one on the planet? The United States of America. Diabetes, especially childhood diabetes. Who's the number one? The United States of America. Certain ethnic and population segments, cancer. Who's number one? United States of America. Baby boomers. Those are all the people in my generation born after World War II. Not too long after. We're the baby boomers. 1 out of 3 baby boomers is either dying from or has died from cancer. We're the largest demographic in the country today, and 30% of us are either dying, terminal, or have died from cancer. So the United States today, with the highest cost on healthcare, supposedly the highest level of technology, we live in the sickest society on the planet. Now, why? And this is why I wanted you to tell me what you just told me about her, okay? Why? All right, I'm going to tell you why the United States is the sickest society on the planet. It is no longer profitable to treat and cure diseases. It is only profitable to treat symptoms. The United States is the most heavily drugged, and I don't mean illegal drugs, I'm talking about pharmaceutical drugs, the most heavily drugged society on the planet. If you're walking in a crowd and there's 60 people in that crowd, at least 20 of them are on a different planet right now. That's a fact. That's because they're taking mind-altering pharmaceutical drugs. Pharmaceutical drugs kill 150,000 people every year in this country, and The FDA states that may only be 1 to 10% of the actual deaths because not all drug deaths are reported as such. So we could be looking at as many as 5, 10 million deaths a year. Now let's take this across the entire planet. Well, why is this happening? Why are we the sickest? Why are the drugs killing us? Why is autism so bad? And let's all relate it back to the most powerful entity on this planet. Now, immediately, and let me qualify this. I'm not talking about the banks, okay? Because the banks have their finger in everything. I'm talking about individual cabals or individual industries, okay? Or complexes. And right now, I need to explain to everybody listening, and I never, ever challenge you to prove me wrong. I dare you to prove anything I say wrong. If it's coming out of my mouth, I have done the research. So, why do I say the pharmaceutical industry? Why do I put all of this on them? Anybody out there who knows anything about the United States knows the massive amount of money that influences our lawmakers. Every big corporation, the military industrial complex, the chemical industry, the food, big ag industry, they spend literally billions of dollars combined every year buying our senators, our congressmen, and even those in the executive branch, the appointed administrators. This is a fact. Okay, who is the biggest spender on influence? Now, this is not just the United States. The United States is the worst case scenario. But from this, you take the UK, you take Germany, you take Italy, you take Australia, you take New Zealand. Need I go on? So how much what's the ratio of spending from the pharmaceutical industry to its next biggest lobbying group? The pharmaceutical industry spends 500% more than the next biggest lobbying group they compete with. The United States of America, okay, is literally run by the pharmaceutical industry. And then their small stepbrother, the one that spends 500% less, but then has the next most amount of influence, would of course be your military industrial complex. But most people immediately believe that since the United States has troops, either overtly or covertly or bases, in 170 out of 194 countries across the planet. Let me say that again. Overt or covert troops or bases in 170 out of 194 countries. Let's talk about an empire. Let's talk about imperialism, okay? You would automatically assume that the military-industrial complex has the most sway over our governance across this planet in what we call the industrialized, the first world, or the free world. It isn't. It's the pharmaceutical industry. And genocide is a big part of the picture. And I won't get into that unless you want me to.
Yeah, well, you can certainly get into that if you want. I mean, let's go as deep as we can.
Well, is there anything you would like to say? Because I will go into it, but that's another whole chapter, which I might rant for at least another 5 minutes straight. So is there anything you'd like to say, even to push back against what I've already said? Because again, I never challenge people to prove me wrong. I dare you to prove me wrong.
Go on, Roger. You prove him wrong.
No, I don't want to prove him wrong. I want to prove him right. I toured America last year. Did Route 66 on a Harley.
Oh, beautiful! Beautiful,
and just an awesome time. And I have to say, I didn't meet more than a couple of people along the way who were anything less than absolutely fantastic. All of the Americans that I met were awesome. And it didn't matter what was their background, whether they were rich, poor. They were just all great. And pleased to see you spending your dollars. But on the very first day, the guy who was leading the pack of 12 motorcycles, he said, guys, what you've got to be aware of is 2/3 of Americans are on drugs. And a lot of them are going to be driving bikes and driving cars in the opposite direction to you. So I know at home you might ride defensively. I'm telling you, here you have to
I absolutely agree. I agree with your friend, except that what he was talking about was all drugs. He was talking about prescription drugs and illicit or illegal
Yeah,
drugs as well.
yeah, absolutely.
If you combine them, because right now there's a little over, I think it's like 120 million out of 320 million Americans that are on some form of either psychotropic or psychological drug, either from their psychiatrist or their psychologist or their doctor, just because he says you've got a little bit too much stress, so on and so forth. Let's take and let's run this in to, where does genocide come in here? Okay. I'm going to tell you something right now. And one of my best series of articles that I ever wrote, and I did massive research on this, is called Connecting the Dots. Okay. If I told you that GMOs, that biotoxins, such as glyphosate, okay, which is an herbicide, and a known cancer causing or class 2 carcinogen. If I told you that biotoxins, that GMOs, that vaccines, that pharmaceutical drugs, that geoengineering, that perpetual warfare, that state-run education systems, that state-owned or state-controlled media systems, and um, big industry were all, and big banks, the banksters, are all connected,
Oh,
all of them,
absolutely.
and part of the exact same scenario with the exact same end game. Now, and I heard you say that, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because I literally can show you where GMOs are connected to vaccines, where vaccines are connected to pharmaceuticals. Even when most people need to understand that vaccines are made by big pharmaceutical companies. In the United States, okay, in the United States, people got rich all the way up until a few years ago because they came up with these innovative ideas and they sold these ideas and people loved it and they bought it. But you were in competition with everybody else. You were in competition with everybody else. And if your product had a downside that caused damage or harm and the public found out about it, you were out of business as fast as you got in business. Okay? This is the way things go. This is the process of selection, natural selection. Okay? So let's stop and think about that. The only industry, and I already told you the influence of the pharmaceutical industry globally, but especially in the United States, 5 times more influence, if influence is pegged to dollars, which it is, than any other industry. 5 times more. Okay. If you take your infant child in and your infant child gets 5 or 6 vaccines and dies, you cannot sue that company, even if it can be proven that it was the result of those vaccines. No damage. And the amount of vaccine damage in this country, VAERS, which is the reporting system for vaccine damage in America, the VAERS system says that 30,000 cases of vaccine damage are reported each year. Again, what I'm about to tell you, you need to understand. I don't challenge you to prove me wrong. I dare you to. Okay? 30,000 cases reported. The CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the agency in this country that is supposed to protect us from disease, the CDC states right on their website that approximately, some years it's 32, some years it's 34, some years it's 20, but the average is right around 30,000. But they state that that number could actually be only 1 to 10% of the actual cases of vaccine damage, because in a lot of cases, the physicians who see the child that has been damaged cannot tie it back to the vaccines or are not aware of the vaccines causing this damage. All right, so 30,000 a year, 10%, 300,000 a year, 1%, 3 million a year cases of vaccine damage in the United States. Let's take that over the last century that vaccines have been administered in this country or proliferated. Okay, so 100 years times 3 million, 300 million deaths could be associated with or severe cases of damage. In other words, being paralyzed for life, being autistic for life, so on and so forth. All right, now let's say 300 million in the United States. Now let's take this on a global scale. With 7.5 billion people on the planet, there's only 320 million in America. We don't make up a very large percentage of the population, but the entire world is getting vaccinated. And if they can't afford it, then the WHO sends the Gates Foundation, UNICEF, whatever, into their country and they vaccinate them. I did shows, okay, with Dr. Nagari from Kenya. I did 3 radio shows. He belongs to the Catholic Doctors Association of Kenya. What they did was they found out that there may have been an issue with the vaccines. So they got a hold of a couple of vials of the vaccine and they analyzed it in their labs and using mass spectrometers, which is phenomenal, okay, down to the gnat's ass. And what they found was that the WHO and UNICEF and the Gates Foundation were sterilizing Kenyan women because these vaccines contained a hormone that sterilized females. And then they came back 6 months later and they did another round of vaccinations. This time the hormone they found added to, not part of the vaccine, not part of the vaccine at all, but added to it, spiked with it, okay, sterilized men. So 10 million individuals in a 1-year time were sterilized by the WHO, sterilized by the United Nations in Kenya. These programs have been going on in third world countries for 20 years. How many people globally do you think have been sterilized by the benevolence of the United Nations? Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. I'm hoping some of you know what those are. Okay.
Yeah, we do. We certainly know what they are. I just want to ask a devil's advocate question, and this
Sure.
is a devil's advocate question. What would you say to anybody that argues that controls population and therefore controls poverty and starvation?
Well, I would tell you I absolutely agree with you. I would tell you that it is a great mechanism for accomplishing that. Does that mean that I'm going back against everything I've said? No, it doesn't. But I need to ask you a question. How many people out there do you think, if they were given the option of helping the planet out by saying, I will voluntarily only have one child to carry my legacy, and from then on, you can sterilize me, or I will abstain, or whatever. Okay? What we have in the stead is a illegal global governance that has made the decision to take that right away from you, to sterilize you without your knowledge, without your input. That, my friend, is tyranny. I would tell you right now, if the world understood the issues of overpopulation and starvation, that you would find many of them willing to do things to help. But we're not being given that option.
Okay.
We are being treated like cattle and sterilized. Do you ask a cow or a bull if you can sterilize him before you chop his sack off? Nope.
So we've got a question in the chat room. I just want to bring up. It's from Sturm. Hello, Sturm. How you doing? And of course, if you're listening along with this, you can go to autonomousmedia.net and you can join in our chat room. We've got a very vibrant chat room tonight. Now, Sturm has asked a question. I'm just going to scroll back up for it. And he said, joining the dots, Roger, who is in control of all this devastation? Will you name them? He says.
Who is in control of this devastation? People in control of this devastation are, in fact, the WHO. Now, can I give you a list of everybody who sits on the board on the WHO who makes the decisions on what countries will benefit from polio vaccines, what countries will benefit from tetanus vaccines? These are two of the vaccines that were used in Kenya, the polio vaccine and the tetanus vaccine. Now, I'm going to tell you something else that's going to really shock the hell out of you, okay? This tetanus vaccine was only administered to women of childbearing age,
Oh,
women from 14 to 46. If you were older than 46 or younger than 14 or you were male, you didn't get that tetanus shot. You didn't get it. That's what initially put the bug in the doctors, the scientists in Kenya to get some of this vaccine and analyze it. Okay. So, can I give you a list? Sure, I can, but you can get it just as quick as I can. All you need to do is go to the UN website, look up the World Health Organization, and look to see who administers these vaccine, okay, programs and projects across the world. This is exactly where it comes from. Now, who do you think is making huge money off of this? You've got to know that the WHO, that these people are paying these pharmaceutical companies big bucks. If they go to Kenya and vaccinate 10 million women, okay, those vaccines are paid for and Big Pharma makes big bucks. I need to tell you right now, in India, Japan, and I could go on, countries across the planet today are literally banning the Gates Foundation, the WHO, and other vaccine related organizations from their countries because of the massive amounts of children that have either died, been paralyzed, or autism. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about autism. I'm going to tell you something else that's going to scare the holy crap out of you. And again,
I just want to. I really just. The problem we've got with autism and the vaccine is that if you try to tell somebody that the reason that their child is autistic is because they've had a vaccine, you're telling that person that they've inflicted that on that child, and that's the difficulty we have with. I know there's a link between autism and vaccines. But the difficulty is because people are so defensive these days, and again it's this conditioning that you talk about on the Liberty Beacon that makes people ignorant. But once you tell people, people have got to accept that if if vaccines cause autism and their child is autistic, they've got to then accept that they agreed for that to happen. Do you know what I mean? And
you're
that's difficult for them.
absolutely right. And I've got to tell you the end result of that. Again, you bring up such a sterling point. This is one of the points we were going to discuss, but I'll bring it right out to the front right now because you asked this, okay? I want you to tell me who makes the most ardent, the most vicious, the most ferocious anti-vaccine activist out there? Who? Who makes it? What makes it?
Somebody who's got a child that's affected.
Abso-freaking-lutely. And I got to tell you something. It is because they blame themselves. It absolutely is. Because the first thing they think of once they find out that there's a very high order of a chance that it was the 6, 7, 8 vaccines that their kid got all at one time in a well baby visit, when the day before that child was Googling and crying and laughing and jumping all over the place, and the next day they're listless, they won't move, their eyes go cross, they're drooling all over themselves, they don't verbalize anything anymore, okay? That happens over a 24 or a 36-hour period. What happened in that 36-hour period? 6 or 7 vaccinations all at once. So what does that parent do? The first thing that parent does is think, I live in the age of information. Okay? A lot of times, most people won't take a drug. They won't take a drug unless they go to the internet and see what the side effects of that drug may be. A lot of people do that today. Far too few do the same thing. They don't call the doctor up or the nurse up, and the nurse says, "Yep, you've got a well baby visit on Tuesday." Okay, what's going to happen during that visit? This is the parent asking. Okay, this is what should be happening. And the nurse says, "Well, the doctor's probably going to catch your child up on the well baby vaccines. That's this, and this." The parent makes a list of it. The parent then goes online and looks at the content, the ingredient, and the side effects of these vaccines. Because I'm about to blow everybody's mind here. I dare you to tell me. I dare you. And I'm not talking about you two on the show with me. I'm talking about everybody listening. That vaccines cannot, have not, and never will cause autism. That's what the CDC and the FDA say in this country. Except when you look at the side effects of the vaccine, it says may trigger autism.
Yep. Roger, you were talking about Fox News, and of course we've got the brainwashing broadcasting company here in England. In the UK.
BBC?
BBC, yeah. And we also have soap operas like EastEnders and all of these things. They just have storylines and news items. They're all designed to make the people that are watching it comfortable with the fact that everybody else is doing this. So why wouldn't you?
Can I put what I wanted to do, and where I was going before you threw this other question at me, which I was glad you did, because I had to make that point. Let me give you a couple of in-your-face facts that are absolutely insane. Okay? Again, no challenge to prove me wrong, but an extreme dare to prove me wrong. And I have written, one of the articles I wrote was vaccines, I can't remember the whole title, but it is mandatory vaccines, a blatant violation of the Nuremberg Code. That's an article I wrote, and I've got to tell you something. You want something that puts the facts in your face? I'm going before I get hard, I'm going to segue one more time. This is one of the things I state in this article. And I'm not going to say it word for word, so if you read the article, you'll find this is the gist of that paragraph. I want, if I can show you, if I can prove to you the direct link between the massive increase in autism on this planet today, especially in the United States, we have by far the highest level of autism on the planet. Of course, we're the most vaccinated nation on the planet, easily, by a long shot. But
I'm the most brainwashed.
Yes, that goes without saying. But if I can show you why, okay, this is a fact. Now, you tell me how the following scenario is not absolutely 100% applicable. You walk into the doctor's office. You sit down with your 6-month-old, and your doctor says, "Okay, it's time for shots." So he pulls out a Smith & Wesson, or any brand you want. He loads one cartridge into the chamber, and he spins that 6-shot revolver. Then he hands it to you, and he tells you to point it at your child's head and pull the trigger. That's a shot. Now let me explain something to you. If you know for a fact, because you've read the vaccine inserts, that there's a real good chance your child would have Guillain-Barré syndrome or paralyzed for life. Your child will have autism, or basically their life will be ruined. Okay? They'll never have the type of life you wish for them. Or your child will be dead. Or your child will have massive food allergies or debilitating autoimmune dysfunctions. Okay? Knowing this, because you did the research, okay, knowing this, tell me when you go in and you sit down and your doctor says, okay, it's time for shots, why these two scenarios aren't exactly the same. Why are they not exactly the same? Sure, the odds are a little bit better with the vaccine than they are with the 6-shot, but the scenario is extremely synonymous. It is exactly the same thing. But The doctor tells you two things. The doctor says, you know what? It's for the greater good. Okay, let me ask you a question. Who are you to tell me, okay, what I need to do with my child for the greater good? How many parents, if given all of the information and knowing full well the rising level of vaccine damage, would voluntarily, if they were not ignorant of the facts, have their children vaccinated? I can tell you there is a massive rebellion, a massively increasing number of people in the United States that are pushing back against vaccines, and I smile every time I see an article about that. I literally smile. Now, another thing a doctor tells you, you want to know the biggest lie you're going to hear from a doctor when you talk to him about vaccines? And you will hear this from almost every doctor out there. I swear to God, they're taught this in doctor school, medical school. When a parent comes up to you and says, as a doctor, what is the chances of my child being damaged by a vaccine? And you look at that parent and you say, the chances are less than 1 in a million. I just told you that over 30,000 are reported every year, and that could be as high as 3 million a year. There's only 320 million people in the United States, and only 25% of them get vaccinated over the course of a year. You're talking about if less than 1 in a million was a fact, that would mean only 80 people in the United States each year would suffer vaccine damage, not 3 million. Tell me about lies.
Absolutely. About lies. It's all about trust, Roger.
Well,
you know, we've got
you got to trust your doctor. All of us are.
You know, we've got the BBC, and people trust the BBC and all the TV channels. And it's funny how, I mean, I haven't watched TV, sort of normal TV, for a long time, but I hear people saying, oh, did you watch EastEnders last night, or did you watch whatever? And some of the storylines they talk about, and I think this was just put there to indoctrinate you into complying with, and that's the whole reason for the storyline of the program. They're called programs, people. Program. That's what they do. They program Family, your brain.
The cartoon Family Guy. Everybody knows Family Guy, okay? They about a month ago, they had a huge show on anti-vaccine people being responsible for killing off almost everybody in town. So if you were anti-vaccine, you were killing people all around you. I'll talk about that once we get past the break, because what I'm going to tell you about that is going to make your jaw drop.
Yeah, well, we are coming up to the break. It is, it's about 1 minute before, and around about this time, I'm going to be Andy again. Well, he sat on the toilet, but, you know.
I'd just like to say something, Jason.
Go on, then.
It's flown by.
It has flown by, and we've got another hour. And we are the most honoured radio station on the internet, because this is Roger's first ever 2-hour interview, and he doesn't do 2-hour interviews, and he's doing one with us tonight. So we are really, really honoured. What we're going to do, what I want to mention as well is we've got raconteurs happening. Raconteurs, that is raconteurs. We've got Doc Rocky speaking at Hull Truth Juice tomorrow night. So I think Andy's going to pop the details of that in the chat room of where it is and everything. But Doc Rock tomorrow night is at Hull Truth Juice. He's doing a talk. He's the big guy. So raconteurs on the way as well, also in association with Autonomous Media. But what we'll do is we'll have a quick break. Get yourself a wee or a drink or whatever you want, and we'll have
a wee drink.
And then we'll be back for another hour. The unprecedented second hour with Roger Landry. He's never done 2 hours before. He's doing it tonight.
You're making me self-conscious now.
Good evening and welcome back to Raconteurs News. It's Tuesday, the 10th of January again, 2017. We had a first hour which was absolutely cracking. It flew by. It just went. It just disappeared. And we've had such a great talk as well while you've been listening to that music that's just been on. So I'm back again. It's me, Jason Holmes. I'm co-host with Ade Hardy. How you doing, Ade?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Jason.
Are you back?
Yeah, I'm
Did
back.
you have a good wee?
I did, thank you very much. And I brewed a coffee.
Excellent. And Roger,
Yes, and no, I
yeah,
didn't
we,
go
we
pee.
we were just talking then, and you want to finish up on vaccines for us?
Yes, real quick,
Okay,
because then we're
the
going to
floor's
start
yours.
tying all of the other issues together. Okay? First thing I want to do is tell everybody, look, y'all need to understand something, okay? I came from a very elitist attitude. I did. I came from the attitude that we were American, we were special, and everything we did was right, and I backed everything and anything we did as what was necessary for America to remain the strongest, the best, at the top of the totem pole.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I came from. Where I sit right now and I look around, I see brothers and sisters scattered across this planet. The Liberty Beacon Project has a website in the Middle East, has a website in France, has a website in the UK, has a website in Canada, has a website in Australia. We're past the point of believing that any single nation has the right to be right all the time, or that any single nation is special and above. Are there nations who can lead by example? Are there nations who are better equipped to set an example? Are there nations who are better equipped to start a process, to start an activist flow? Yes, there are. Are they always going to be America? I hope to God not. But
Mm-hmm.
everybody listening, especially in Great Britain, and I love Great Britain, I have many friends there, okay? They do understand what I'm about to say. Whether for right or wrong, whether we wish it to be or not, where goes America goes a lot of what we call the first world or the free world. If America drops to her knees and submits to a global governance, an elitist caste, the rest of the world is basically going to look down at the floor, shrug their shoulders, and say, it's done. Not all of you, but a good portion of you, enough to sink the boat. We are the cowboys. It has been said by the elitist caste, especially, okay, in the Council of Foreign Relations meetings, that the United States need to be brought under control before a new world order or a global structure can be put into place, because we are the cowboys of the world. And as long as we're standing there professing our sovereignty, our nationalism, like Trump is right now, then the rest of the world is going to want to play that game. And there's nothing wrong with that game. We can be a united planet and still have our sovereignty, still have our cultures, still have our way of doing things. That doesn't keep you from. I spent 30 years traveling this planet and I absolutely love it, but I am an American. So what do I see today? What I see today is I am not an elite. What I see today is I have no special privilege. What I see today is that anybody on this planet who cares about humanity, who cares about freedom and the ability to make the decisions that alter or plan or structure your life belong to you, that is my brother. I've got to explain something to you. This is another meme that I've made up, okay?
Okay.
True leadership is determined by those you choose to stand beside you, not behind you.
Yeah.
If I, as a leader, tell you you must stand behind me, all you have done is replaced one tyrant for another. But if I ask you to stand beside me so I can lock arms with you, we have just become twice as strong very quickly. No leader should ever wish to stand in front. True leadership is defined by those you wish to stand beside you or choose to stand beside you, not behind you. This is how I see the world today. Was this what you wanted, my friend?
Always.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always remember I think it was actually part of a comedy program where they were talking about the First World War. And they said, yeah, tomorrow we're going to go over the top. And the officers said, yes, we'll be right behind you. And the sergeant said, yeah, about 25 miles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's Blackadder.
It was Blackadder, you're right, yeah.
25 miles in 25 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Again, that's another meme you will find in Reality Bites on the Liberty Beacon. I've literally made up hundreds of them. They're not all brilliant, but some of them are actually worth repeating occasionally. So let's finish up with the vaccines because there are other aspects. I talked about genocide, and I want to tie all of these functionary aspects together. So let's get done with vaccines. Vaccines, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the biggest issues, okay, affecting the massive or the wish, the drive to reduce the population of this planet without our knowledge or against our will. And again, I do appreciate the discussion where, okay, but anybody who believes that this planet is overpopulated, again, you've been listening to propaganda. You can take every living human being on this planet and put them on a landmass the size of Australia and New Zealand combined and leave and give them all a decent yard for their family to play in, the whole 9 yards, leaving the rest of the world totally empty.
Yeah, Roger. When I was mentioning that, I was just sort of
No, I
asking a
understand.
question that somebody might ask. I mean, it wasn't my opinion. I know the world's not overpopulated. I mean, for God's sake, Australia is everyone lives on the 90% of the population live on the coast. So
90% of the population live on 15% of the landmass.
Yeah. I actually heard a statistic about the UK, and that was that they could actually give every man, woman, and child 8 acres each.
Yep.
I don't have 8 acres.
There's
My son doesn't have
320
8
million.
acres. His wife doesn't have 8 acres.
There's 320 million Americans in every single state in this country, with the exception of maybe 3. You could drive for hours and hours and hours and hours and never, ever see another human being. There is so much open space in this country. It is insane.
There's 25% of the states has never been mapped by foot, only by satellite.
Yeah. United States is big, and now you've got to
25%.
understand Canada's bigger, Russia's bigger, China's about the same size, India's about the same. So you got to understand there's a massive. But let's get through these vaccines so we can start to discuss other things like GMOs, geoengineering, and other things. Let's talk about why is this crazy old fool who keeps coughing? And I apologize for that. I have a very irritated throat, so please bear with me. Why is this guy saying vaccines are so damaging? First off, I told you if you take a look, you will find autism listed as a side effect on some of the vaccines your child is supposed to get. Your doctor will insist your child gets, okay? Along with other diseases that will absolutely destroy your child's life. But why am I so ardent about discussing this, okay? We know for a fact that the CDC conducted 15 years ago a massive study on the MMR vaccine, the measles, mumps, and rubella combination vaccine. And you guys probably are aware of who Dr. Andy Wakefield is, a friend of mine. I've done several shows with him. I have a lot of respect for the gentleman.
Yep, me too.
Okay. There was a big study done 15 years ago. What they found out was that children who were administered the MMR vaccine before the age of 36 months, okay, had a marked increase, a significant increase in autism, okay, a significant increase. And within that study group, African American children who received the MMR vaccine prior to 36 months of age had a 340% higher rate of autism occurrence. Ho! Stop and think about what I just said. Okay, so the CDC now can go to the American public and say, look, autism is just rising like crazy. We can do something about it now. And Big Pharma found out about this, and Big Pharma said, oh, wait a minute. Do you know where the administrators, the head people of like the FDA and the CDC go when the presidents change and a new person gets appointed. They go to a vice presidentship, a presidentship, a vice chairmanship of a big pharma company. Big pharma literally owns the FDA and the CDC in this country. But what most people don't understand is that the United States is not a republic, like everybody's being told since 1871. It's a corporation, and that the CDC and the FDA are not health agencies for a government. They are, in fact, corporations, for-profit corporations. That's another thing most Americans have had their head buried so far in the sand they don't understand, but it's true. So now we've got 15 years ago, a study was done absolutely showing with their own science. They can't say the science isn't bad. They did it, proving the connection between the MMR vaccine, and I'm sure it would have been many other vaccines had, but that's the only one they used in the test. And now you see a massive increase in autism. What they did was they accumulated all of the data, and back then most of the data was recorded on paper. They took all of the data from the entire research team, they put it in a metal trash can and lit it on fire. They burned it.
Yeah.
And it was about a year ago when when Dr. Thompson, okay, stepped up and said, my conscience is I just can't take this anymore. And he blew the whistle, and he had a complete copy. He had saved a complete copy of all of that data. So now we have absolute 100% proof. Okay, what is the rise in autism? And again, I'm using America because we are at the forefront of this. We suffer the highest level. What I'm about to tell you, if it doesn't shock you, you're dead from the shoulders up, okay? The United States, when I was born in 1954, suffered a level of autism, or if a doctor who didn't even know what autism was back then had seen the symptoms, was higher than well over 1 in 30,000 children suffered the symptoms that are tied to autism today, whereby if a doctor sees them, he says, okay, that child's autistic. Well over 1 in 30,000. Today, okay, or at the end of beginning of 2016, so about a year ago, when the last set of figures came in, the autism rate in the United States is 1 in 28 male children and 1 in 50 female children. By the year 2025, at the present rate of increase, okay, if nothing is done, 1 out of 2 children born in the United States will be mentally handicapped for life. Now let's do a little bit of math. In 1954, all right, 1954. So we're talking about 65 some odd years ago. Well over 1 in 30,000 in 3 generations, of which we have seen a massive increase in what? The vaccine schedule for children. We now have gone from 1 in well over 30,000 to 1 in 28 in just 3 generations. Is there anybody out there who thinks there's anything normal about this at all? Going from well over 1 in 30,000 in 3 generations to 1 in 28. If that doesn't absolutely come upside your head like a Mack truck, you're an idiot.
Yeah,
But
the
that
trouble is,
these
the
Roger, facts. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, most of the idiots spend their time watching the BBC and watching the indoctrination thing in the corner of their sitting room.
So we're talking 1 in 28 children, and that's already causing a severe drag. And I hate like hell to say this because those with autism didn't choose this for themselves. They didn't. So to say it's a severe drag, I'm talking about the scenario, not the individuals, because I love everybody. And I've met some autistic people who are just the most phenomenal people. You can't help but want to give them a hug. You just can't help it. Okay. But if you take a look at this, it's already with this many children, okay, triggering into autism. It's already a severe drain on the resources of what is supposed to be the most capital-rich nation on the planet. Now, let's fast forward to 2025. And if it goes unchecked, 1 out of every 2 children born, half of the population born, will be mentally restricted for life and will require full time, or most of them full time care for their entire life. You are looking at the total destruction of the American society. We cannot survive that. We cannot survive that. It is physically impossible for half of a population to require help. Who are they going to get help from? The other half. Most autistic people require 2, 3, 4, 5 people in their life to help them. Well, if half the population is mentally handicapped and the other half isn't, you're looking at the destruction of a society. We're not talking about 100 years from now. We're not talking about 50 years from now. We're talking about 10 years or less from now, the ball starts dropping. Anything after 2025, if it hasn't been arrested, takes us straight down the toilet. Within 1 generation, we're crippled. Within 2 generations, we cease being a nation. Within 3 generations, people will be looking at their textbooks going, what was America, teacher?
Yeah.
This is where we sit.
The other thought on this, of course, Roger, is that a lot of those people with those conditions are now relying on those pharmaceutical products just to survive daily. And when the shit hits the fan, and those drugs are no longer available, what do we have walking this earth?
Psychopaths.
There you go.
Okay, so that's the vaccine issue. All right. And if you want me to come back at someday in the future to discuss these topics, each one an entire show, I can give you a lot more detailed information. We can do GMOs for one show. We can do geoengineering for one show. We can do perpetual warfare. We can do vaccines. But what I'm trying to do right now is show you where all of this is being done or by the same individuals to elicit the same result or the same goal. So we've gone through vaccines. I've given you things that should be scaring the holy crap out of you, and I've only given you 1/10 of 1% of what I know. All right? I've written
Roger, we're looking at 35 minutes and we want to tie the whole thing together. So where do you want to go next?
Well, the next thing I want to talk about is GMOs. Okay?
Right.
Genetically modified organisms.
Uh-huh.
Okay? What I need to tell people is GMOs are every bit as bad as vaccines. GMOs do change your DNA. Okay? When you eat something that has been modified, that is what happens is called horizontal gene transfer. Look it up. I don't challenge you to prove me wrong. I dare you to. So our DNA is being changed by the food that those who would play God are creating for us. All right. But that's not even where the bad stuff comes from. Okay. Not only are GMOs not as healthy, don't have as much protein, don't have as many vitamins, that horizontal gene transfer does occur, that it's in the biosphere, they're hell because GMOs can literally wreak havoc on the biosphere anywhere where they're planted if they get outside the crop area. Okay. But let's take it one step further. Okay. Not just genetically modified foods, but also genetically engineered biotoxins like glyphosate, which is Roundup, Monsanto's Roundup. It's called glyphosate. That's its actual chemical name. This has been considered, been stated to be a class 2 carcinogen by the WHO, the World Health Organization, which I almost fell off my chair when I saw that because as much influence as Monsanto has on these people, I don't know how the hell they ever put that out, except that people are screaming so loud about this across the planet. Individual scientists have done the research to prove it. The WHO probably figured in order to maintain any credibility, they had to at least say something. Let me explain something to you about GMOs, the things you don't know. That innocent-looking apple, that innocent-looking bean, that innocent-looking pea, that innocent-looking ear of corn, you go to the grocery store and you're about to buy. I don't know if anybody here has ever heard of a company called Epicite. I also wrote an article about this, very in-depth. Epsite. I believe it's EPICITE or something close to that, okay? It is a company that did bioengineering, okay, for plants, for crops. The government funded them to the tune of millions of dollars to produce corn that only had one purpose. Any male who ate that corn was sterilized. How many of you knew that? Now hold on a second. What purpose of anything you could possibly think of, what purpose could you possibly have for growing and designing and engineering corn that would sterilize all the males in the population? Now I'm going to take this one step further, okay? If you stop to consider that we have no idea what happened to that program. It went underground. It totally went underground. Not only that, they're not terminator seeds, which means you can take the seeds and grow another crop. We also know that it was grown in open fields in Southern California and that there were cornfields all around them. Has that gene, go ahead.
Sorry, Roger, you keep making all these assumptions that you always say, we know that this, we know that, and we know the other. I mean,
what did I say?
It just seems that anybody that eats corn is going to be sterilized.
No, that's, if you let me finish, that's not what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
What I'm saying is, what I'm saying is that these initial crops were grown in outdoor fields. Okay, we don't know if the pollen was carried by bees or whatever, okay, to a surrounding crop and it jumped. And this can very well happen. This is why GMOs are dangerous, because they can end up by literally, okay, destroying a local, whatever you call infrastructure, a biosphere. So we don't know what happened to that. And if you go to try and find out if the corn you are purchasing has the epicide gene in it, you run into a brick wall. At some point, you are told that information will not be made available to you. I'm not guessing this. I know this to be a fact. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm not telling you that the corn you're eating, all right, is going to make you sterile. I'm not telling you that. What I'm telling you is that the proof is out there. There's even a patent for it. Yes, a patent for the epicide corn, the epicide gene. A corn was developed that the only purpose it had was to sterilize males. That gene can be put into eggplant. That gene can be put into peas. It can be put into beans. It can be put into apples. It can be put into pears. Anything you can gene splice. What they used the corn for was to prove it in fact worked, which obviously it did. Now, I need to explain something to you. I want you to take a look at the rise in infertility across the free world. Please take a look at those numbers, especially in Canada and the United States. We have the quickest rising level of infertility on the planet. We are the most GMO'd societies, United States and Canada, on the planet. Again, I'm not telling you anything. I'm asking you to do some research and draw some conclusions. So now we've got vaccines, which we know can cause infertility. Now we've got GMOs, which we know can cause infertility. As a matter of fact, they were genetically engineered. A gene was produced specifically to do this. And also the chemicals, the herbicides they're sprayed with are class 2 carcinogens. Okay? So look at the rise in cancer rates since the introduction of GMOs in the United States or North America. Look at the rise in infertility, okay? And you will find they are both very steep curves rising upward. All right, so now we've got GMOs, now we've got vaccines, all right? Let's go to geoengineering, all right? I need to explain something to you. Geoengineering does exist, and for anybody who doesn't, here's a newsbreaker for you. Go to the Liberty Beacon. There is actually an article there where the government not only admits that geoengineering is occurring, but they want They're saying right now that it needs to be done to save the earth, and they're going to start doing it right out in the open. This is the American government, which has just signed on, saying this is the only way we're going to save the planet from global warming. Vaccines are being sprayed from planes at high altitudes. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at some articles on the Liberty Beacon, they've been talking about this in Australia. The Australian government even admitted it was happening, that vaccine components were being sprayed from planes. So now you've got massive components of biologics, okay, viruses, so on and so forth. You also have, what's the biggest amount, what's the most content in their spray? Most people think it's chemicals. It's not, okay? It's barium, it's strontium, it's copper, but the biggest component is aluminum nanoparticles. Why aluminum nanoparticles? That's the biggest component in what's being sprayed because they tell you it's for cooling the planet. Well, if you spray nano-sized particles of aluminum in the upper atmosphere, 30, 40,000 feet up, first off, they're so tiny. Nano means very, 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 very small, much smaller than even micro, okay, particles. So they have a very long hang time, but anything, and they reflect sunlight because they're particles of aluminum. So, but anything with any mass to it at all, whether it's micro, nano, or macro, eventually has to fall in a gravity well. It has to fall to Earth. So now we constantly see in California, we constantly see all across the planet, massive spraying going on. Let's tie one dot. Let's connect one dot. Monsanto, not too long ago, about 2 years ago, bought into a partner company which they funded to develop genetically modified seeds that would grow in aluminum saturated soil. Aluminum saturated soil that is saturated to the point where plants won't grow, because plants won't grow. Aluminum kills plants, okay? If it's free in the soil, if it's bound in the soil, because aluminum comes from dirt, all right? So, but if it's unbound, and it's nano-sized particles, it will kill plants. So Monsanto spent tens of millions of dollars developing seeds that will grow in aluminum saturated soil. Gee, I wonder why, considering that's not a situation that exists naturally anywhere you would possibly do farming on this planet. It doesn't exist. Okay, so now the food you're eating is going to have aluminum in it. The vaccines you get all have aluminum or mercury in them, but most of them have aluminum because it is an adjuvant. The mercury is a preservative, okay? Aluminum is one of the most deadly substances to the brain. It destroys the synapses between the brains, which means that you don't get that electricity traveling across them, which means these cells basically shrivel up and die. It destroys the thought process. There is a direct tie by Dr. Christopher Exley, who is British. Look him up. Who just published a study. This is one of your own. It's his study proving that Alzheimer's and dementia are directly tied to the massive increase of aluminum, free aluminum, in the air, in what we eat and what we breathe and the products we use. This is a big reason for the massive increase in dementia and Alzheimer's on this planet today, of which the United States suffers the most. It's in your vaccines. It's in the air you breathe because of geoengineering. It's in the food you eat now, because if you had to pay tens of millions of dollars to develop seeds that would grow in aluminum saturated soil, that means that these root systems are pulling up these nano-sized particles of aluminum, and they will be in the food you eat. So now we've got all three of those things all matching together. We also have drugs. More and more of this planet is on drugs every single day. As I told you, over 30% of the United States is on mind-altering drugs. If you're in a crowd of 60 people, 20 of them on average are on another freaking planet. They're in la-la land. All right? And I hate to see the day when all of those drugs go away, because you will see chaos beyond belief. So there's the drugs. Now, let's go to perpetual warfare. Perpetual warfare has not worked. Had the nukes been brought out, okay, it might have been a way to cut back a big part of the population, but in all of the ionizing radiation you're going to leave off, the half-life of these radioactive particles, so on and so forth, you're talking about a massive portion of of the planet not being available to support life at all for a very, very long period of time. And the elites want to cut the population back. They don't want to cut the livable area on the planet back. So perpetual warfare is a way to hinder an increase in population, but not a way to decrease population. So, what do we have? We have Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, which clearly state as one of their goals to reduce the population of the planet to a sustainable level. Anybody know what the Georgia Guidestones are? This is a monument set up in Georgia, which is one of the states in the United States, a huge granite monument.
Yeah, don't it set out a goal of having 500 million people on the planet?
I think it's less than that, isn't it?
No, keep the population of the planet at 5 million people in harmony with the planet. That's what they say, in harmony with the planet. Less 500 million or less. Okay, there's 7.5 billion of us. 7 billion people need to go away. You're not going to do it with nuclear war. Because if you do it with nuclear war, nobody's going to live here. All right? What are you going to do it with? You're going to do it with disease, GMOs. You think you can only genetically modify food? There are labs spread all across this planet. Look at the one in Africa that let Ebola out. These are owned by governments, by militaries. They are there to produce some of the most virulent and deadly diseases you've ever heard of in your life, with a 90 to 99% kill rate. There are dozens of them all across the planet. So we're either going to see a massive pandemic, we're going to see massive infertility rises due to GMOs and vaccines. We're going to see populations dropping off. If 50% of the population born has autism, most, if not all, of these children do not. Okay? They don't get married and have children. So by default, not only have you crippled the society, but you've also massively decreased the amount of children they're going to be born.
Roger,
Yes.
do you think that you know how you're saying that they're going to massively decrease the population? Do you think that they're going to do that in one fell swoop
Nope.
and it'll be something that we can all know, or do you think it's just going to be suddenly one day we wake up and there's only 500 million of us, those lucky to be left?
If they want to remain in power and not have to go underground and hide, they're going to do it using the vaccines, using the GMOs, using the geoengineering. They're going to do it so that over the next we've already seen it. We've already seen a massive decrease in birth rates. Okay, there was a 314,000 birth deficit in the United States at the end of 2014. 314,000 less deaths than the last time those statistics have been taken. So it's already functioning. It's already being done. Okay, I've already told you that if we continue, autism by 2025 could affect 1 out of every 2 children born in the United States. So you're looking at this happening. But why are they producing these deadly diseases? Well, the deadly diseases have a twofold purpose. One is you've got a population that starts to rise up, starts to become a problem, starts to say, we've had it with your crap, starts to push back. You can go in and release a very virulent stage of Ebola, okay, whatever, into that population and kill 90% of it off. The other 10 or 15% that survive are going to be too busy trying to rebuild their lives to worry about anything. Or if you get a big global, which I'm starting to see, a global awakening, then you can have a global pandemic. And if you're not aware of how many DUMBs, deep underground military bases, and underground cities have been built, there's over 1,000 in the Soviet Union. There's about 1,400 in the United States, and they're scattered all over places like Germany, China, all over the world. And there is a huge seed vault okay, just north of the Arctic Circle, with every seed in perfect preservation, frozen, in case the planet needs to have all of these plants repopulated. So all of this has already been done, okay? All of this has already been done. And if you can't see that all of this works together as in one scenario, if if you want to get rid of everybody, okay, yeah, you could take out your ray guns from space and just start shooting everybody. But this isn't the way this works, okay? Because then you have to hide too. It has to seem like it is something that has gone wrong within our genome, something that has gone wrong in humanity, that we're just all of a sudden not as fertile as we used to be, that our birth rate is dropping off. Even if we know what it is, how can we get rid of it all? How can you know that the next ear of corn or the next papaya you pick up doesn't have an epicide gene in it? You can't. Okay? So what we're looking at is an intentional depopulation. And these elitists are so brazen, so absolutely arrogant that they put up a huge granite monument in Georgia for the entire world to see and said, nah, 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 nah. Look what we're going to do. And nothing you can do is going to stop it.
Roger, can I either, I don't know if it's a question or a statement. If I was a psychopath and I'd got lots of friends who were psychopaths, and I wanted to make a shitload of money and decrease the population of the world without anybody really realizing what was going on. And
okay, you just described the scenario that we're all living in there right now.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I think what I would probably do is I would pay off all the government and just turn them into puppets. I would then own all the food companies under lots and lots of different names.
All the pharmaceutical companies.
I would own all the pharmaceutical companies. I would own all the health companies.
All the
And I would
Australia,
also own all the health insurance companies.
And the
so
media.
That if somebody, yeah, and the media, so that if somebody came forward, but with the health companies, somebody could come forward and they needed an operation that would cost £4,000, dollars, euros, whatever. But if it went through insurance, we would have to quadruple that price. And I would think I would then own, or what else would I own? The hospitals. Do you think I'd be successful, Roger?
Okay. Obviously, that's a trick question because what you just described is the scenario we all are living in.
Absolutely.
And what I was trying to do was not so much because I know you're aware of what the end game is. I was trying to give you the cogs in the wheels.
Absolutely.
To define the cogs, to show you how the wheels fit together, how this wheel turns this wheel and this wheel turns this wheel. And when all of the wheels are turning in unison, you have a product, you have a goal, you have accomplished something. Now, am I the type of person who says, oh, woe is me, the world is lost, we might as well just stick our heads between our legs and kiss our ass goodbye because nothing matters anymore? Absolutely freaking not. What we do need to do is awake as many people as possible. We need to eradicate the ignorance that controls them, the ignorance that justifies everything they think going forward. We need to eradicate the programmed ignorance that these elitists work so very effectively at instilling. This is what the Liberty Beacon Project does. This is what shows like yours do by having dumb guests like me on. This is what we need to do. If we wake the world up to this, I just partnered up with Permacube. This is a gentleman who has a way of growing enough food for a family of 6 in a 200 square foot area in your house. It will also produce fish. So for food, it will also produce pure water. It'll produce medicinals. It'll produce enough food to feed a family of 6, and it'll produce enough power to run your house. It's called the Permacube. If all of us who were concerned went out and got one of them, then screw the GMOs. Then screw the vaccines, then screw the biotoxins, then screw because we have stepped outside of their sandbox, and they will be pissed.
There is one thing I forgot to mention, and that, of course, is the in inverted commas, very big inverted commas, the education system.
Oh, I did mention that at the beginning.
Yeah.
But that's another show altogether. We have what's called Common Core in this country, where it does not pay anymore to be special. It doesn't pay anymore to be an overachiever. Now, if I go and do something in a classroom and a child who is considered to be slow or someone who just doesn't have the drive to even try, they're going to get a medal. I'm going to get a medal. And what is the child who busted his ass who gets this, a medal? And the child who did absolutely nothing or very little gets a medal. They both look at each other. And the one who says, I didn't do anything and I got a medal, says, ain't I special? And the one who busted his ass and did extremely well says, why did I try so hard? Next time I don't have to.
Absolutely.
It's called Common Core. And it is destroying the competitive edge in this country.
You see, the elite are really good at getting all of the minions to believe in the difference between color, creed, race, whatever you want to call it. Religion, anything. And what we've all got to do is stop saying those things. They're not for us. You know, let's not let them divide and conquer. Let's stand together.
My wife was Puerto Rican. Well, she is Puerto Rican, which is very, very, very just absolutely gorgeous woman. One of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. Obviously, I married her. But, you know, if you're Puerto Rican, you're not only do you have the Latin blood being Spanish, but you also have the black blood because Puerto Rico was the import island for all of the slaves that came from Africa. They all came to Puerto Rico. From there, they were sold off to the mainland United States. So Puerto Ricans are a mixture of Caucasian, Hispanic, and black blood. They are probably one of the most mixed races on the planet, the Puerto Rican population. And I've got to tell you something, okay? What I see when you take the best of all of these different races that make up humanity and you put them together, you end up with something that's really beautiful.
Yeah,
it's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to be afraid of.
Roger, we're looking at around about 6 or 7 minutes before we need to end this 2 hours. Where do you want to go from here? And what do you really want to say to everybody listening that will really drive this message home that the Liberty Beacon is out there screaming so loudly about?
Well, I would love for everybody to go, and you can start your tour on the Liberty Beacon by going to, it's The Liberty Beacon, all one word, thelibertybeacon.com. Okay, that's the flagship site. You'll get an idea because we talk about everything and anything. We talk about the GMOs. We talk about the geoengineering. We talk about the education system. We talk about political tyranny. We talk about rights and freedoms. We talk about all of these things, all of the health issues, because what we need to understand is redirection and misdirection.
There we go. There we go.
When these people say, okay, to themselves, well, these guys are all focusing on GMOs right now. My God, they're killing us. They're waking up. And then someone else in that CFR meeting or that whatever, that Bilderberg meeting, they tap him, the other guy on the shoulder, and they say, okay, so let's just put a little extra emphasis in the vaccine issue or in the whatever. In other words, we can redirect. You never go out to fight a war with a pistol. You go out to fight a war with a pistol, a rifle, a machine gun, a tank, an aircraft carrier, a destroyer, a fighter, a bomber, a rocket, a missile. This is exactly what they have. This is your GMOs, your vaccines, your geoengineering, your political discourse, your and on and on. These are all weapons that connect together under the control of an elitist caste whose sole purpose is to control, to own, and to control.
And that, Roger, is exactly what, when I was becoming aware, I just could not grasp. I just couldn't get my head around.
If we get strong in one point, they'll lax off there and they'll shift the emphasis to another point.
And all of those things that you mentioned are the things that are never mentioned on the BBC or Fox 5 in any way that brings out the truth they just bring out some kind of confusion so that everybody latches onto it and disappears down one street.
I will tell everybody listening right now, okay, one more time. Everything that I've told you today, and of course, this show will be recorded. I'm sure it'll go out as an archive so you can actually take it and listen to it and stop it at certain points, get certain phrases and sentences I said, go to the Liberty Beacon, put them in the search bar, and see. I will never challenge anybody to prove me wrong. I freaking dare you to prove me wrong. And if you believe that anything I told you today was for grandstanding or clickbaiting or to make you go to our website because we'll get a lot of money if you do, we don't have any ads. We don't even have that site's 4 or 5 years old. We don't even have a donate button. We don't believe in commercialization. Okay? So then none of this is clickbait. But if you don't believe what I've told you, if you think it's for my personal gain, you're an idiot. And I won't apologize for that. Because I truthfully believe you're an idiot.
Well,
I don't know about you,
superb.
Jason, but I'm blown away.
I promised you this wouldn't be a dull show. Like I said, imagine what my shows, my TLB TV or radio shows are like. Yeah, okay. I'm being nice because you guys, you're the host and you invited me in. I'm being passive here.
Roger, it really is a pleasure. And there are often guests that I hear on lots of radio shows who talk about one specific area. What I love about the Liberty Beacon is it's all about tying it all together. And that, for me, was the difficult thing to come, not only to get my head around, but to come to terms with. How can some bastard be really that horrible to the rest of the world? Because
most of them that work in that are not even aware. It's like anything else, okay? In the military industrial complex, you might have a product that is very deadly, but the people who produce it, they each only see the tiny little piece that they contribute to it, and that in itself is not dangerous and doesn't do anything to harm anybody. It's not until the whole thing, the whole scenario comes to a massive culmination at the end that it becomes something really dangerous. So you've got a very few people who are controlling a whole hell of a lot of people, and you and me, we are the generators of our own demise.
Yes.
That's the programmed ignorance. We are the perpetrators of our own demise. We need to wake people up and say, you need to stop killing yourself and your family. That's the person who gets a vaccine damaged child and becomes the loudest, strongest, and best anti-vaccine activist you've ever seen in your life. It's a nasty way to do it. It breaks my heart every time it happens, but they are the best activists you will ever find.
Roger, I've said many times that most people who become aware because they freaking well have to. I was very lucky. I got a mate called Jason who kicked me up the arse and said, listen, brother, you need to look at this because this is serious shit.
All right, Jason. Good for you.
Yeah. And, most people who become aware have to because of fracking, because of they've got a son or a daughter who's gone through.
You really want to get me going on fracking. I hate that. Oh, God.
That's happening 3 and 5 miles away from my home. So that's going to be my next big thing that I'm going to try and...
The United States has the largest oil reserves on the planet, at least 10 times all of the rest of the oil put together, between 3 and 7 or 8 trillion barrels of oil under the southeastern portion of the Rockies, but it would take fracking to get it out. We literally have over 5 trillion barrels of oil in the United States. Why the hell are we destroying the entire planet by taking oil from the rest of the planet? Never lie, ever.
No, and that's I think that's a great point to end on. I mean, we've got to invite you back. It's such we've got to get you back when Andy's on, because I'm sure Andy had tons of questions that he would have loved to have asked you.
He'll hear it, and he'll say, "Damn it, I should have been there."
Well, he was too busy on the toilet.
Oh, I heard. He sent me a message earlier. He did.
coming up after us on Raconteurs News and autonomousmedia.net is Psycho Nautilus. It's a repeat of Freeman Jack's show, Dark State MI5 and Shoot to Kill Policy. That's going to come up right after us. I'd really like to say a very big thank you to you, Roger, for coming on the show tonight. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Well, let me tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you let me eradicate a little bit of programmed ignorance today, because that's what I wake up for every morning.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Roger. I have to say that, as far as guests that I've heard, Roger, you are one of the few that have managed to tie things together. 2 hours is a very short time, but
that's why I had to say I had
Yeah.
to read to 2 hours. I had to, because I knew we couldn't do this in 1 hour. But
Yeah, sure.
we will do it again. But just remember how I opened all of this by saying I'm an expert at nothing, but I know enough about everything to have an intelligent conversation about anything. As the founder and the director of the Liberty Beacon Project, it is incumbent upon me to be familiar with all we push back against. Am I an expert? No. But I can discuss all of these things with you.
Are you an expert? No. Are you a great guest? Absolutely. It's been absolutely fantastic. I'd also like to thank Ade. How have you found your first show, Ade?
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, we couldn't have wished for a better guest than Roger. And what I just
but you were
encourage.
good.
Thank you. What I'd just like to encourage Roger to do is just one more time, just give us the website that people need to go to find you, so that they can, get out on their own voyage of discovery.
If you want to get into the Liberty Beacon Project, the first place you stop off at is the Liberty Beacon, all one word, thelibertybeacon.com.
That's excellent. Roger, thank you very much. You are a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, don't forget, everybody, Psycho Nautilus, Freeman Jack, it's the Dark State MI5 and Shoot to Kill Policy that's coming up right after this. Don't go anywhere. Stick to Raconteurs News, stick to Autonomous Media, and we'll see you again very soon. And thank you to everyone for listening as well, because if it wasn't for you, we'd just be talking to ourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.